Okay, good afternoon. My name is Fons van der Ham. Welcome to today's closing event of the Sci-Fi project. The Sci-Fi project and with the title Building Resilient Mid-Sized Cities Through Innovation. And I think we have a nice audience today. We have a whole bunch of speakers, but I just want to tell one thing, which you probably already saw on your screen, is that this meeting will be recorded and will be available also later on for those who cannot make it this afternoon. So anyway, again, very welcome to you all in this European meeting, I should say. We have a nicely packed program. It's concise in about 2 hours, but with a nice, well, I would say, number of ingredients. Maybe you can go one back. So I think we're going very fast, but I just wanted to see the areas, the agenda with all the nice ingredients. We'll have short pitches. We have some videos, and you see at 15:45 we have a matchmaking possibility. So we'll break up in 2 rooms, and you get the possibility to meet the cities which are presenting today, the 4 cities. So make up your mind. So by 15:45 you can actually choose to attend one of these breakout rooms. The program will actually touch almost everything we have learned during the Sci-Fi project, all the themes and the topics, which we now more and more call ingredients, because we made a cookbook of it. And that's the interesting thing. So what does that mean, a cookbook? And I don't think that you're now in a cooking program, but we're cooking something, and that's smart cities. So I've asked Jan van Bokrijk, who is the Smart City Manager, Innovation Manager for the city of Mechelen, to present this today, a summary of the Smart Cookbook for Mid-sized Cities. Jan, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Fons. And of course, thank you all so much for joining our closing event. So like Fons said, my name is Jan van Bokrijk. I'm the project manager for the city of Mechelen. And we've been doing the Interreg 2Cs project Sci-Fi, which stands for, as you can see on the next slide, Smart City Innovation Framework Implementation. Now, before I tell you what we did in this project, I'd like you to know how we got together. Because like most of us, we noticed that the world is changing at an unprecedented speed. Fueled by rapid population growth and the need to have all amenities close by, cities have been growing like never before. And by now, around 80% of Europeans live in an urban area, and that number is only rising. Technology, on the other hand, is changing even faster. What is revolutionary today might already be obsolete tomorrow. So if we want to keep up, we need to be able to adapt and shift gears frequently. Now, it's already very hard for most people and private businesses to keep up, and we have to be honest about it. Cities aren't usually known for their agility, so it's even more difficult for them. There are often constraints that can hinder innovation, such as slow decision-making processes, procurement rules, hierarchy, and politics. But when there's a challenge, there's also an opportunity, which is exactly what brought this partnership together. So in this project, 4 cities with a comparable DNA, Mechelen and Bruges in Belgium, Delft in the Netherlands, and Saint-Quentin in France. We've been experimenting in the last years to see how we can enable and accelerate innovation in mid-sized cities by using open data and technologies. Now, we couldn't do it alone, so we brought in help of 4 knowledge institutions. Agoria, which is the Belgian umbrella organization for all technology companies. Cambridge Cleantech, a British company that connects people and businesses for a smarter, more sustainable future. Faubourg Numérique, which is a French incubator of innovative projects in the sector of Internet of Things and services. And of course, the University of Southampton, which is one of the most prestigious universities in Europe. So in the next slide, I'll touch a little bit more on what sci-fi means. Sci-fi, is that science fiction? Well, not exactly, but also maybe a little bit, because what we did was quite futuristic. So what was that exactly? Well, first off, we started by mapping out the problems and the needs of the cities involved. And we translated those to challenges and business cases, for which we then did open calls to the market. We did 2 rounds of calls, one in 2018 and one in 2019. And we didn't just publish these challenges on our city's website. We used a very, very big network to spread the word. From the local network to smart city partners, schools, specialized platforms, you name it, we were able to find a right match in the most of the times. And once we've selected our partners, they had 6 months to develop a proof of concept. And even though we did have quite a small reward, because we could only offer 10,000 euro due to procurement rules, we did have a very interesting quid pro quo. Since they're usually very good at one thing, but they lack experience or resources for other elements, the startups that we chose were guided and coached very intensely during what we called a business accelerator. And in this accelerator, they received training, feedback, resources, and a large network, just basically anything they needed in order to succeed. Then once we had a proof of concept, it became time to evaluate and to maybe even consider a full-fledged solution. And even in the case of a successful pilot, it's entirely possible that you decide not to go for an implementation. For instance, we noticed that there wasn't enough interest and buy-in from the environment department after we did the air quality pilot in Mechelen. So that was reason enough not to proceed with or not to consider a full implementation. And on the next slide, it was quite a journey the last couple of years. And most importantly, we learned a lot. But what good is knowledge and experience if you can't share it with others, right? So that's why we decided to bundle all of our learnings. And that's not just our recipes for success, but also our recipes for disaster. So this way you don't have to make all of the same mistakes that we made. We chose to present the results of this project in the form of a cookbook because our approach has a lot in common with a recipe. In both cases, first you decide what you want to achieve, then you collect the required ingredients, you process those, and then you try it out. It is through this process that you learn where adjustments need to be made, but also how to make the recipe your own. For example, you might not have or like the same ingredients to set up a smart city project as others, then you can replace them with some other things that are in your cupboard or things that are more to your taste. Maybe you discovered that the stove where you process all your data isn't as good as the one used in the recipe, which means you have to adjust your cooking time. And the same goes for any solutions you might procure to become a smart city. Any plans or tools that work for someone else might not work for you. So in other words, this book is a guide, but the exact method you use is entirely up to you. And also, this whole cooking book is a stepping stone to the rest of our documentation, of which there is a lot. We have extensive guides on pretty much all of the themes in the cookbook. So if you're hungry for more, there are a lot of links that you can click through in the cookbook to dive even deeper into the subject. So what were those subjects? On the next slides, you can see that we had 5 major themes. The first one is to have a thriving ecosystem. And Dimitri and Fons will tell you a lot more on how to achieve that in the next workshop. After that, you need to write your challenges and business cases, which I'll give you some tips on doing that a little bit later in the presentation. Open data and interoperability are, of course, very important if you want to make your city a smart city. And Vincent and Alexander will dive into the interoperability part a little bit more later. And I'll explain on why opening your data is so important. Public procurement isn't always easy, and neither is innovative procurement. But Joke and Evelien will tell you all about that in the final workshop. And then last but not least, we explain how to proceed after you've done a pilot. So if you want to know more about the pilots themselves, you can get to talk with us at the end of the event. So in the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about the challenges and business cases. First, you need to know what the problems are that you want to tackle in your city. It can be for your own organization or for your citizens. So engaging and more specifically, actively listening to your stakeholders is crucial. You can do this, for instance, by questionnaires, consultation rounds, and workshops. Once you know what the problems and the needs are, then you can start building your challenges and business cases. From the very beginning, you need to ask yourself, what if this pilot is successful? Because you're not just innovating for innovation's sake, you're doing it to increase the well-being of your citizens or your organization, and that requires a full solution, not just a gimmick. If you don't have at least the attention to turn a pilot into a full-fledged project, if it's successful, then you're just wasting your time. Another big takeaway here is that it's crucial to focus on your needs and not on a solution, because doing so will help boost creativity with startups, and they might even come up with solutions that hadn't even crossed your mind. We did divulge what the expected outcome and impact was, as well as the already available data, but we didn't steer in the direction of a solution. It's also important to not make your application process too heavy, because you might lose potential fitting companies if they have to jump through too many hoops before they are even selected. And here on the right, you can find a shopping list of ingredients that you need to make a successful challenge and business case. And the whole cookbook is filled with these kinds of handy lists, by the way. So on the next slides, a little bit about open data, why you should open it. Well, they say data is a new oil or the new gold. So for some, it might not make sense to share this precious resource with everyone else. However, there are many good reasons why, as a city, you should open up your data. So the first one is that it will improve your services, because your data isn't locked away for everyone to see and can therefore be accessed by the people who need it. Secondly, in citizens in a positive way, they know what's going on in their city, and they might even be able to add their own data. Then if your data isn't of the highest quality, then it will have a detrimental effect if you want to use it as a policy tool. If more people can look at your data, it's more likely that they will spot errors. This exact thing happened in the de-icing pilot of the city of Delft, which prompted them to check the entirety of the data and bring it up to standard. Transparency is, of course, also a very big factor, and this will increase the trust in of others in your city if you're more transparent. And it builds a little bit further on the citizen participation, but if your data is out in the open, it's only, of course, logical that people are able to find it more easily. And last, but definitely not least, opening your data has economic benefits, because it allows companies to create products based on those data, and it reduces the cost of your improved services. That being said, we don't advocate just throwing out every bit of data you have willy-nilly. You should do it with a purpose, and of course, you have to make sure that it's GDPR compliant. All right, so next slide. Well, those are just a few takeaways from our 48-page long cookbook, and I can assure you that I've only scratched the surface of the content that's waiting for you. And even after the workshops that we will have later, there's so much more, not just in the cookbook, but like I said, in all the other guidances that we have. And you can download it for free. It should be in the chat, but you can also use this QR code on the screen as well. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that our cookbook and our learnings will help you guide you in your future smart city projects.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this introduction into the smart cookbook. And as some of you might have seen already in the chat, you find the link to download the cookbook right away. So maybe you want to wait a little bit until the end of the session and then dive into the cookbook fully. Talking about the chat, we actually saw that there were some issues with the black bars in the presentation. I experienced the same, and I have the feeling that we have solved it, but be sure that we'll do our best to get rid of them. By the way, the chat, you can use the chat for your questions. You will have a chance at the breakout sessions at the end to talk to Jan and to other speakers who are following in a moment. But we'll note them down. I'm not sure that I can actually tackle all of them, but then we'll certainly follow up on these questions one-to-one. So that's for the cookbook, and more on the contents of the cookbook will follow in the next presentations. But first, you might have recognized and seen that in the logo, we also have the word Interreg. And Interreg basically stands for European Program, and Sci-Fi as a project is co-funded by the European Commission. And therefore, it's also good to hear more about the idea behind Interreg. And we have asked Nicolas Meulenbroek, the project officer of the Interreg 2Cs Joint Secretariat, to join us today and to tell us a bit more about the objectives of the European Union with this kind of program and the relation with Sci-Fi. Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you all for attending this online closing event for the Interreg 2Cs project Sci-Fi, Smart Cities Innovation Framework Implementation. My name is Nicolas Meulenbroek, and I am project officer at Interreg 2Cs Joint Secretariat. I feel honored to open what will surely be an interesting and successful closing event. Next slide, please. Europe's urban areas are home to over 2/3 of the EU's population, and they account for about 80% of the energy use and generate up to 85% of Europe's GDP. They are both a source of and a solution to today's economic, environmental, and social challenges. Making our cities function better and thus smarter has an important role in mitigating these challenges. The European Commission defines smart cities as a place where traditional networks and services are made more efficient with the use of digital solutions for the benefit of its inhabitants and businesses. In this respect, the Sci-Fi project responds to this growing demand of innovative solutions to make our cities ready for the future. Interact2C happily finances and supports projects like Sci-Fi to make this possible. Next slide, please. So to provide a bit of a background, I would like to zoom out a bit to illustrate the framework in which Interact2C is operating. As you can see on the scheme, one of the aspects of the European Structural and Investment Fund is linked to the cohesion policy. There are two main goals under the cohesion policy, financed by three different funds. And next to the first goal, the investment for growth and jobs, the Interact network serves the second goal, namely European Territorial Cooperation, or ETC, and is funded by the European Regional Development Fund, or ERDF. In the next slides, there is a bit of background on the three forms of cooperation programs under the ETC. Interact2C falls under the cross-border cooperation programs. This program supports cooperation between NUTS 3 regions from at least 2 different member states lying directly on the borders or close to them. It aims to tackle common challenges and to exploit the untapped growth potential in border areas while enhancing the cooperation process, and in this way the Union can be developed in an overall harmonious way. On the next slides, you can see that the Interact2C program covers regions in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the UK. Its objective entails the development of an innovative, knowledge and research-based 2Cs area where sustainability and inclusivity have a high priority. The protection of natural resources and the promotion of the green economy are highly valued within our program. On the next slide, you can see that we have an ERDF funding of 60%, 82 approved projects, and a fully committed ERDF budget of 241 million euros. The 2Cs is well on its way to create a long-lasting positive impact on the region. Our 4 priorities include technological and social innovation, low-carbon technologies, adaptation to climate change, and resource-efficient economy. The Sci-Fi project falls under the first objective, for which over 107 million euros of ERDF is committed. On the next slides, more concretely, Sci-Fi works on the framework conditions for innovation, or specific objective 1.1. This specific objective wishes to increase the capacities of 2C stakeholders for technology transfer and for the development of clusters. It also aims at increasing the capacities of innovative companies to engage in international activities. On the next slide, you can see some of the expected results of this specific objective, and they include the reinforcement of the conditions for delivering innovation. This could be done by stimulating the cooperation of public and private stakeholders, civil society, and research entities according to the so-called quadruple helix paradigm. Introducing and adopting common approaches, collaboration arrangements, joint structures, and policy tools supporting capacity for delivering innovation. A few examples of actions under this specific objective consist of the formulation of common development strategies and joint policy action plans to support the innovation capacity of stakeholders, the establishment of new cross-border networks and platforms. In addition, the establishment of joint tools and services to improve framework conditions for delivering all forms of innovation at cross-border scale, and the establishment of pilot actions linking capabilities of several facilities by networking the partners of the quadruple helix. These are among the actions that we see with projects under this specific objective. On the next slides, we are happy to broadcast that the Sci-Fi project has positively contributed to our program's objectives. Sci-Fi contributes to the general trend of increasing the involvement of the public sector in innovation processes. By activating the market for innovative solutions, the project wants to improve public service delivery using data, and so tackling common challenges cities face in the field of mobility, energy, and environment. To make this possible, the Sci-Fi project facilitates cooperation between different types of stakeholders, such as public authorities, businesses, and citizens, the so-called quadruple helix. This is a great example of cooperation and co-creation under specific objective 1.1, and more concretely, cities opening data sets that were barely exploited and are now shared and used by SMEs to solve challenges, and this clearly shows the value of opening this data. Sci-Fi has established a cross-border network of 2,000 members, which will enable businesses to scale their services to multiple clients. This involves local high-tech businesses, local authorities, among others. They also made an accelerator where experts provide coaching addressing technical and practical hurdles of public-private innovation and public services, which will reduce the time of solution development. Also, 2 rounds of pilots were implemented and used as success stories. Those pilots worked on air quality, smart parking, and traffic flows, among other things. They also made a guidance on existing open data tools, methods, and innovative public procurement, the so-called Cookbook. And they created a coaching program that is also helping these organizations to develop. On the next slides, we can see the contribution to the program's capitalization. Sci-Fi has great potential for this capitalization. We hope for this project as well as for the other 2Cs projects that there is a life after the closure of the project. For instance, the Sci-Fi Accelerator is a good example of an achievement we can communicate broadly at program level. Also, the Cookbook is great for the legacy of the project. This accelerator, as well as the Cookbook, might be transferable to other contexts or stakeholders, or there could be potential synergies between projects that work on city innovation inside the 2Cs and beyond. The 2Cs program wants to support their projects on those topics. The achievements of Sci-Fi could be promoted at our next annual event in 2022 in The Hague, for which more details and a save the date will follow. Also, information on future funding and other programs and network opportunities are interesting for the project after it has officially ended. We do hope that the added value of the achievements of Sci-Fi can benefit a large number of people and organizations for a long time in the future. So this is it for me in a nutshell. Please do not hesitate to contact us for any more information or any inquiries about the 2Cs program. Once again, I would like to thank you all, and I wish you a very pleasant and interesting closing event. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicolas, for your introduction and information about the Interact 2Cs program. And the takeaway for me is, and has been always, is that whatever we achieve within this program should be applicable also for other cities throughout the European Union and even outside there. And I fully agree with you with the fact that the learnings can be reused also in different environments. And as a matter of fact, I myself are actually applying this now in a completely different environment, more on a ministerial level. So it seems to be that what we have learned here is really usable in many different cases. But still have a couple of questions, because as you know, that this kind of programs about innovation, we cannot invent or we cannot predict exactly, 4 years, 4 years in advance what would happen exactly. So can you tell us a bit more about the flexibility in the program, and probably also new Interact programs to actually facilitate this kind of changes halfway, because of the learning we do during this process?
Of course. So, of course, when this project is ending, we do hope that there is a lot of things that we can take for the future, for example, the Cookbook or other learnings. And I think for the learnings in this specific project, there will be opportunities in other programs, other European programs, to use those learnings and to develop new synergies or new projects going back from what was learned in this project, and then continue building on that for future projects. So we truly hope that it won't end here with the official closure of the Sci-Fi project, but that the learnings will and can be used by other organizations for eventual future projects and other European programs, because there are also European programs that cover basically the same region, for example, Interact Europe. So these are all programs that a possible future project also can benefit from.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and another question I might be interested actually is, of course, the Sci-Fi project was together with 4 cities and 4 knowledge institutes or organizations bringing in knowledge and support. But how does the Interact program support SMEs?
Basically, it's for Interact, it's very interesting to always have this cross-border networks, not only between member states, but also between different kinds of organizations. So we would like to have, we always try to be a facilitator to make cooperation possible between different types of organizations to work together and to share common objectives and to make a project possible. So in that way, we can approve additional funding, for example, for SMEs that can work together with, for example, knowledge institutions or with local authorities. So they can also use their own knowledge or their own know-how and use that in cooperation with other organizations to make some things possible. So we want to be a facilitator and we want to support SMEs in that way to work together with organizations which it might sometimes find it difficult to find them or to work together with them.
Okay, thank you very much. In the meanwhile, I saw also one comment on the chat regarding the SMC platform from Polish network. The European Union has quite a number of instruments actually to support the development of innovation and also regarding city development. And I think I saw this one good example also coming by. There are more and more resources, and we also try on our website to provide the links to these kind of resources when you start off with working on smart city development. So thank you again, Nicolas, for your presentation and for your feedback. And if people want to contact you, they can just write you an email directly.
You're very welcome. So, thank you.
Then we're moving to the next part of the session, and that is a bit more in depth on the cookbook. And it happens that I'm myself telling something about the ingredients to build an innovation ecosystem. And I'll do that together with Dimitri van Baalen, who is Policy and Management Information Manager, Data Manager for the city of Mechelen. And well, I think we'll start off with Dimitri, and then I'll come after you. Dimitri, there you go.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As Fons indicated, I work for the city of Mechelen. I was closely involved in the program from the start until the end. And within this workshop, we would like to draw your attention and to tell a bit more about the ecosystem. As Jan said in his presentation, the ecosystem is basically the first thing you need to look at. And why would you do that? Well, of course, if you want to make a recipe, if you want to cook something, first thing you need to know is for how many people am I cooking and what do those people like, what do they don't like? And you also need to know at what stores can you buy your ingredients to cook. And who else is working in the kitchen that I'm cooking. And basically these things are what your ecosystem are. You can go to the next slide, please. As Nicolas, for instance, mentioned already in his presentation, if you look at documentation on smart cities, if you go to any event regarding smart cities, I think within the first half hour, you will read the quadruple helix about 4 times. And indeed, it is a very important concept within smart cities, because these are all the stakeholders that are involved within developing and solving a challenge. You need to know what the challenge is, who's suffering from the challenge, and what are the organizations, the companies that can help you to solve this challenge. And this is basically your ecosystem outside your organization. You as a city, as the director of the challenge, the owner of the challenge, you start looking around to see what's happening in my city and who are the companies that can, or the organizations that can help me. But actually equally important, there's a second ecosystem that you need to take care of, and that's the ecosystem within your organization. And within Sci-Fi, we saw that one was really crucial, because it's quite easy to build an ecosystem outside your organization. There are already a lot of initiatives that are going on, as mentioned in the chat, for instance, the Polis network, and there are a lot of collaboration organizations or platforms where you can meet other cities. You have the network organizations like Agoria, like Faubourg Numérique. You have the universities that you can talk to. So those are quite easy to identify. But if you really want to incorporate innovation within your organization and to make it work, you need to make sure that your ecosystem within your organization is also very vibrant. You need to start looking over the walls of the different departments. And as I mentioned, you have a lot of different kind of departments within your organization, and you need to make sure that they're all on board and they're all supporting the same ideas. So those are the two ecosystems you need to look at. I'll give the word to Fons now to go a bit more into detail on how they work together.
Yes, thank you, Dimitri. Maybe the next slide. In beautiful purple this time. Yes, I think we have both experienced, both from Mechelen and from Delft, but also from Bruges and Saint-Quentin, the need actually to work together with several stakeholders. And I think Dimitri already summed that up to a certain extent. And there are a couple of things I'd like to emphasize from that. One is one thing which I've seen also in other environments is the need for executive sponsorship, which means basically that your management of your city should be fully involved as from the beginning. And that for a very specific reason. Because normally people say, well, just start small somewhere in the corner and don't tell anybody and then just go ahead. But that's a danger, because I always ask the question, what if the pilot we're going to do is successful? And you want to scale up and you need, much more money. And then if that is only the moment you're going to inform your management or the board or the council, then you're a bit late, and it might actually never happen, or it will create the enormous delay. So this valley of death, which is known for most of you working with startups, is something you should address as soon as possible as you start off with the project, or just before you started the project, so that you answer the question, what if the project at the end is successful? How can we see to it that we scale up fast? But nevertheless, I would actually say start small and actually start with one department in your organization. In Delft, for instance, we started focusing, and we'll talk a bit more about that, about solutions for problems in the public space. And so we started working with a few individuals from that organization. Trying to actually go working with the whole organization and starting up 5 projects at the same time is killing. It won't work. So we try to focus, and often I must say that the focus is first on spatial and economic departments. In the social domain, it's a bit more difficult to start it off. So start on one and then use this, what we call the oil spot kind of working, from one successful project, you can actually have other people in the organization getting enthusiastic about it and go to the next one. But apart from the fact that you're still might be focusing on one small department, or one department and one small project, you still have to involve, talking about internal ecosystems, you have to involve as from the beginning the right people from legal, from procurement, for instance, so that at the moment that, after 6 months or so, you want to scale up, you have those people, for instance, procurement ready to act. One of the other things is actually teaming up with other cities. And recently in the Netherlands, I've seen many items actually about the possibility or the need to team up. I think there was a McKinsey report saying that we had about 400 smart city projects in the Netherlands, and that there is a bunch of them which look very similar. So I advocate very strongly working together with other cities, for instance, in your region, which are more look-alike. Now in sci-fi, sorry, in sci-fi, we did this, of course, not in the region, but more over a couple of countries. But in general, I would say look where you can actually find each other. Now, in the Netherlands, in this case, I talk for the Netherlands. There are, for instance, 2 other organizations: the G40, which is a organization of mid-sized cities in the Netherlands, and the I have a bit of a cold. I'm sorry about that. The G40 and the Future Cities Foundation, who actually bring together these cities and look at possibilities to work together. By the way, also the European Union provides a kind of matchmaking platforms. If you have, and this is also the way we got together as Sci-Fi, where you can find each other and team up on these challenges. So as part of your ecosystem. And then startups. In general, cities don't know startups. Of course, in Delft, there are all kind of startup networks, but the city never worked with them. So we need help, and there are organizations available who actually do challenges. They actually search. They have large databases of startups. They help you to connect with the startup and scale-up community. So make use of that kind of networks, and I think they're in all countries available. And of course, what is also mentioned here is the universities. Not only universities, this could also be vocational educational institutes, but anywhere, knowledge institutes where you can team up with in your city. Think about students being involved for a certain research, for all kind of things they can add as part of their study into these kind of projects. So this is really helpful, not only for the city as such to create solutions, but it's also bringing value to the study and to the universities and the knowledge institutes themselves. And let's not forget on the right hand side the citizens. Citizens are pivotal. Not always it's necessary, because it's not always something where you need the input. We did something on de-icing in Delft, and that's something, you know, which is more a technical challenge than it is something which is where you have a lot of citizen involvement. But in general, and we'll talk about that during this program, there are possibilities for citizens involvement, and we should do that. And governance, what I mentioned there, that's the politicians, and that's per country could be a bit different. But it's important to involve them. And what I see already happening in the Netherlands is that many political parties now address smart city and innovation as an important item for the next years for the policy of local municipalities. And finally, make use of organizations which are already existing in your country, in your city, in your region. In the case of Delft, we have something called Haaglanden. They organize an event about innovation projects, an ideal way to exchange what you have learned, but also to make contact with other cities and to team up for new projects. So in all these cases, these are all elements of your ecosystem. And the ecosystem will be different per city. For any project, it will look at a different way, but you will be able to reuse those contacts you will build up during these kind of projects. Okay, that's for me. Dimitri, back to you.
Yes.
Who and how?
Yeah, we'll go to the next slide, because up until now, Fons and I have talked about 10 minutes about what your ecosystem should look like. But of course, you'll also want to know, how do we get there? Well, the important thing is, don't try to invent the wheel. As I said earlier, for the outside network, you have to look at the existing groups, events, fora, boards. There are already a lot of initiatives going on the European level, on a country level, on a region level, that are doing smart city things, or maybe they're doing something on mobility, but they're looking at innovative ways to look at mobility. And also there you can inject your smart city ideas into those groups and fora. So that's very important. Now, of course, you need to look at your ecosystem in like your garden with vegetables. And of course, once you start tackling a challenge, you won't take all your vegetables from your garden. You need to pick those vegetables that you need to combine within your recipe. So it's important to have like a broad network, but also not to try to involve your network all the time in all your challenges. And that's what Fons mentioned with the de-icing challenge. If you have a challenge where you know you don't really need the input of your citizens during your solution development, then for that specific challenge, you don't need to involve them. But of course, in another case, for instance, in Mechelen, we did a pilot on making sure that children can ride their bike safely towards the school. Of course, there it's crucial to have them on board and to have them involved within the whole process of the solution development. So that's an important thing to know. You need to have a very broad ecosystem, but it's also important to narrow it down based on the challenge that you're tackling at that moment. Yeah, a few other things. I think that the main important thing also is in former years, if you looked at the city was like a dictator. They knew what was good for the society they lived in, and they were gonna say how everything should be done. Within smart cities, as a city, you need to take a step back. You need to say, well, I don't know everything. I know that's hard for some government officials, etc., to say that, but it's the truth. Within the current run of technology that's going on, it's not possible as a city to know everything. So what you need to do is you need to be a director. You need to make sure that what is going on in your city and how the challenges are being tackled, that you know what direction they're going and that you steer them in the right direction. But you need to lose control at a certain time and not be a dictator and let some initiatives go the way they go without taking active role in it. So that's a very important thing. And that's also within your internal network. You need to make sure that the operational departments don't just do what they're doing without looking over the walls. It's crucial also when you're looking at smart city applications. The key is sharing data, and so you need to break down the walls between all the departments, and that means also that you need to let some things go and let other departments or other stakeholders within your ecosystem take over.
Yeah, thank you, Dimitri, for your input there. And I'd like to emphasize the last few things, because out of my own experience, having worked not only for Delft, but also for many business, corporate, and other environments, what I see is a natural behavior in many government entities is to, not to go outside too much. And basically the whole idea about innovation is actually to dare to go outside. So I started off saying something about executive sponsorship, and innovation is always something which has three angles: technology, processes, and culture. And I think that culture-wise, there are differences between cities and differences between government organizations, but in general, going outside your comfort zone, I would say, and finding new networks and other networks is not something which is very natural, and it's also not always very promoted within government organizations. But this is still the key at the end of the day. So what we need is some pathfinders, some people who take the lead to do that. And that, if you feel that you're that one, then I think smart city development is something for you, and actually pull with you the organization. But without, we can have the greatest technology, as it said, open data alone isn't going to solve a challenge. You might have the perfect open data, but if your organization doesn't have the processes to engage with startups, to be ready to procure solutions, to be ready to be launching customer, or there is not a culture and people try to avoid uncertainty at all costs, then it's going to be very difficult to be successful in building smart cities. So in that sense, I'd like to emphasize that. Okay, by the way, I heard that it was not McKinsey. I just said McKinsey about the report. It was Capgemini, but I think it's indeed a Dutch document, and I think Mr. Mol or Miss Mol, I don't know, I can't see, actually added that to the chat. The question which was raised by the same listener today is, which part of the internal ecosystem have you found to be most resistant to letting go of the will to be a dictator? And is that different per city or national culture? Dimitri, you want to answer on that one?
I think for Mechelen specifically, we found the biggest resistance not against being a dictator, but the most hesitation to go into the innovation type of way of working was a procurement department, because that's a department that's typically very much focused on legislation, and so they're quite strict in what is possible and what's not, and you need to make sure that in their minds also they look at the possibilities of innovative procurement, and we'll have another workshop on that. So that's already a good reference to show them to. So that's difficult. And on the other hand, it really depends on persons within your organization. And as Fons said, one of the three angles of innovation is culture, and you need to make sure that for instance the people working within the operational departments, they're willing to say, I don't have the complete knowledge of where I'm working in, which is a very delicate thing to say, because you're basically saying, well, I don't know everything I need to know to do my job. But if you look at a larger scale and see that within your ecosystem you can work together, I think that there's a big opportunity to have that attitude. But it really depends. We saw that in the challenges as well, that for some challenges it was very easy to have that openness within the government employees, and for other challenges, well, it was a bit harder.
Yeah, and I think without pinpointing exactly to which departments are on, but in general, what I see is that in government organizations, you see a lot of compliance management instead of risk management. So it's like, have we checked all the boxes instead of what are the real risks? And this kind of change, and especially in middle management, it's and it's not their fault. I mean, it's a system which has been created around compliance management. And that is a change in thinking, not so much did we tick all the boxes, no, what are the challenges and how can we mitigate them? And that requires a different mindset. And I can only say that one manager has that more than another. So it's also a process. And I think if I look at my own experience, amongst others in Delft, that we have gone through a cycle, a process, and as long as there is a willingness, but you have to provide also the comfort to move in that direction. And again, I come back to the point, it starts with the executive sponsorship. So yeah, that's certainly something to work on when trying to handle resistance in the organization. Okay. Thank you, Dimitri, for your input. I'm looking at the agenda, so we're right in time at the moment. So feel free to ask further questions, and I'll try to handle them during the program. For this moment, I'd like to actually go to our first video contribution, and that video contribution is by Eduardo Vigo, the International Business Development Manager of Sister, and Sister is the organization which worked with Delft on a solution for smart waste. Well, I think Eduardo is going to explain what they did with us. By the way, I might come back to you after the video. Let's do the video first.
Sister tackled the maintenance challenge launched by Delft municipality in 2018 within the first call of Sci-Fi. The challenge was related to the optimization of intervention rates to improve the public waste management in Delft. Starting from open data provided by Delft municipality, we developed a geographic decision support system. This analysis has been done to define which areas of the city were more stressed by waste flow. After the initial analysis, a small number of ultrasonic IoT waste sensors were installed in various cities areas, allow us to measure real-time field level of waste bins and validate the grid model. An information dashboard shows an optimized collected indicators by sensors and data provided by the municipality. The web service shows graphs, distribution maps, and FGOT tools to monitor waste flow in real time and forecast critical situations. The pilot ended in July 2019 with a successful deployment of the information dashboard. Data collected and processed by the dashboard confirmed that public bins in some area collect much more waste than bins in other areas. This justified the goal to adjust routes of field operators and optimize intervention rates, as well as saving public money. So during the first half of 2021, we implemented a route optimization system within the dashboard, leveraging on artificial intelligence algorithms. We added some more sensors on field, and we developed a dedicated mobile web app for field operators. Among the various lessons learned, there is certainly the fact that without a solid, reliable, and continuously updated data architecture, it is difficult to optimize asset management in a data-driven way. The goal for the end of 2021 is to make the use of these digital tools operational within the management processes of the company that deals with the maintenance and management of public waste in Delft. Then we would like to scale up our solution in other municipalities and find new partners interested to collaborate with us on implementing this solution for a sustainable future of European cities. Thank you and have a nice event.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for the video, and I think it was clear, but if any of you have questions for Eduardo, I know he's in the meeting, so you can use the direct message solution in the chat and ask him questions directly, or even, you know, make an appointment to have a call. And if you want to know more about this solution. What I wanted to say about this solution in itself is that this was a unique thing. I mean, the city of Delft working with a startup from Imola in Italy. So not only the solution itself, but also the road to get there and to work with in an international way, which was very, very new for both for the city of Delft as for Sister. And it worked out quite well. And I know that at least some of my colleagues in Delft have improved their English a lot, actually, because of this cooperation, because of course most of us don't speak Italian. But we had a great solution, and we actually also worked with a Belgian company in this, so it was a truly European approach on this project. And as Eduardo already said in his video, we are actually scaling up, and hopefully soon this will be a solution which will be used throughout Delft. And yeah, it's open to you. If you're interested in the solution, just contact Eduardo and he'll tell you all about it. All right, thank you very much for this first video, and we move on to the next topic in the session. I have lost the PowerPoint, but maybe I'll go back now, come back. I don't know. Jan, do you have the PowerPoint there?
I think it's Juliet who's handling the PowerPoint.
Okay, so anyway, we're moving to the, yes, I think it's back, yes. We're moving to the second workshop. And the second workshop is about interoperability. That's a word I've been practicing on a long time, but it's also a difficult and a complex topic. Joining us for this session today are Vincent Desmartiers. He is from the DIH, the Digital Innovation Hub. That's also a European project, Faubourg Numérique from Saint-Quentin. And Alexandre Chaffot, who is the Innovation and Smart City Manager of the city of Saint-Quentin. I think it's Vincent who is starting off first.
Vincent? Yes, thank you, Fons. So, well, considering the challenge of that local governments have to address about innovation and digitalization, it's quite important to consider interoperability as one of the core components of the strategy. Because even if interoperability is mainly seen as a technical topic, it is the main principle that leads to sovereignty, flexibility, and finally, efficiency. Indeed, interoperability brings the local governments and community the capacities to own and manage the digitized assets and processes independently from any vendors or proprietary technology. In other words, this avoids vendor lock-in. So it allows also to better structure the public procurement policies through clear technical references that address interoperability and integration challenges, such as data availability and data ownership. And also it provides the possibility to engage a wider variety of solution providers and better manage their responsibilities and interaction, especially in the case that you just presented in case of international cooperation in different countries. So one of the main principles we have applied through the implementation of an innovation framework in the Sci-Fi project is that it is crucial to experiment in order to learn and to continuously improve the process, especially in the context of our small and medium-sized cities, with usually quite motivated teams, but also limited means. And to gain experience with interoperability, we can focus on two main tips. As already said, it's important to start small, but with concrete use case and with real expected impact. And also to use this digital twin approach from the beginning. And well, it's easy to say for sure, but it can appear to be complicated. But actually, it's not so complicated because the good news is that there are existing and affordable resources to tap into, regardless of what the level of digital maturity of your organization is. From a Sci-Fi partners' perspective, the most relevant resources about interoperability are the so-called minimum interoperability mechanisms, the MIMs. That are delivered and supported by global communities like the Open Energized Smart Cities Network and by the European Commission, especially through the Living in EU initiative. So currently there is a complete set of 10 MIMs, but the core component to realize interoperability are MIM 1 and MIM 2 that characterize the functions of context informations and of common data models. These two core MIMs constitute the subject of a NetC standard called NGSI-RD, having its most popular and mature implementation delivered by the open source components managed by the FireWare Foundation. So let's see an example of implementation. And we can take this example of the sport field watering optimization in the city of Saint-Quentin. So the monitoring of the automated watering systems required a lot of time-consuming tasks to coordinate and to program the operations, taking into account the calendar of the field reservation, the mowing operations, and also the external weather forecast. But instead of starting to develop a new standalone application to organize the field operation, the city has decided to implement an interoperable platform, not only to be able to collect and distribute open data, but also to virtualize any assets managed in the city and its possible interaction with other systems applying this concept of digital twin. So thanks to this city as a platform approach, the existing system of the city of Saint-Quentin have been virtualized and the platform offers the capacity to integrate any kind of system that needs to interact. So after this structural effort to implement interoperability, the city has new possibilities to leverage its digital transformation. There are harmonized tools and procedures for the supervision and the virtualized infrastructure. And as there is a single entry point to interact with the city infrastructure, it is quite easier and faster to deploy innovative services involving citizens and opening business opportunities for SMEs. And finally, the platform enables the smooth integration of advanced data treatments like business intelligence and machine learnings. So that's for, let's say, the technical part of interoperability, but I think it's quite interesting now to discuss with Alexandre Chaffot, representing the city, about the benefits from the city perspective. So Alexandre, can you please tell us your point of view about how the city of Saint-Quentin services leverage the interoperability implementation?
How we integrate? Yes. So how we implement the interoperability principle in our procurement. So mainly for us, it was basically a question of shaping our tender around the two main principles. So the first one is to use a common language by obliging or asking to each provider of the different component of digital solution to be compliant with the standard, with open standard for exchange information, so the APIs mainly, and also with a standard data model, inspired by the different EU initiative you have quoted, so Pyware, OIC, and also Living in You movement with more recent initiative. And so this is for us the condition to have a solution that are interoperable by design. And the second element for us is to separate our tender in current batches. In fact, that describe system that are technically independent from each other, but are designed to work together like a system of systems. And for us, this is a condition to avoid the risk of procuring solution that work in vertical silos, where for example, the hardware part and the software part are totally embedded and cannot work separately. So it's really the two principles we have integrated regarding the question of interoperability in our tender for the watering, the smart watering project. And also another project for whom we have for Rome, we have reuse the same strategy. So and this other project is managing waste in canteens. So we use the same strategy.
Okay, I think one important concept you mentioned is this idea of a common language. I think that's also an important input from the interoperability principle, and it can ease also maybe the one thing that has been discussed before, the resistance to change, to better interact with, as Dimitri presented, with the local ecosystem, the internal ecosystem, and the external ecosystem. It makes, I think, a kind of bridge. Can you maybe elaborate about that, this idea of common language to talk with your internal partners and the external ones?
Okay. So the bridge, yes, you can imagine bridge at different level with the common language. The first one is in terms of management of the digital project, because they typically imply different provider in charge of different elements like hardware, application, etc. And so the common language add more clarity, in fact, in the definition of the roles, and also the responsibilities of each partner in charge of its specific element. So for us, you can resume that like it's act like a sort of rule of the games. So that's applied to each partner or party involved in the digital project. So it's good from this point of view in terms of management of innovation. And the second point is more the benefit for the city as a buyer. In fact, because we identify some benefit in using the common language, because it gives to the buyer more flexibility at two levels from me. The first one is how can I resume? The first one is that we are more able. Sorry. The second. One advantage for us is that we are more able to purchase solutions that are able to integrate themselves in our legacy infrastructure. And so it's really an important question regarding the market of smart city solution, because city typically own many legacy infrastructure. So for us to be able to add a new solution that are interoperable with our legacy system, but in fact it's lower the cost of digital transformation for us. So it's a good point. The second one, the second flexibility is that we have a more, how can say, a better sovereignty over the project, because we have more control on key assets of the project. What I mean is especially the key assets are the data generated during the project and also the data model to exploit them. So it gives us the possibility. In fact, to change the provider of the solution without restarting from scratch if we need, and also the possibility to reuse more easily the data to make other projects in other projects. So for me.
And also what is interesting, I think, in Saint-Quentin is that you have run this experimentation during the sci-fi acceleration, and then it leads to the public tenders procedures. Thanks to the political support, Franz mentioned this, that it's important from the beginning to have this vision to go towards procurement and public tender. Can you tell us some concrete indicators from these public tenders? How many applicants? What is the profile of the applicants? and how you manage this, as you explained before, this way to better negotiate with the with the applicants.
Mainly for the, I will resume for the two projects for which we use the same methodology, so watering project, and after the monitoring waste in canteens. So for both, we received 18 applications from startup, also SME, and also large company. We have some, and so it was good for us because the question for us before to engaging and reusing the interoperability and the standard promoted by the at EU level was yes, we publish our tender, but how many applicants will be ready to to answer by using this standard, because it was not sure for us. And in fact, we was very so the conclusion for us, it's that the market is potentially ready for using this standard from the provider and suppliers. So for us, it's a good result. And the second result, what can I say? It's so we have 18 applications. So that's mean for us many applications, in fact, and for a buyer like us to have many applications is will turn into benefit, because in fact we have more diversity in the pricing offer, and also more diversity in the choice of the solution that fits our initial need without going straight too far from them. So it was very useful to have diversity for us. And also I can say I have the intuition, but it has to be confirmed in the future, that if you use a tender structured around well-defined batches, you can probably you encourage the possibility to have some disruptive application that could potentially break down the price of solution. It's mainly my intuition for the canteens, because this is a small market, and generally this market is characterized by provider that offer integrated solution that is very expensive, and thanks to the batches, the separation between hardware, application, etc., we are able to have some different application that lower the price. So it was a good result for us too.
Yeah, and I think it's also our role as external ecosystem, as a digital innovation hub, also to educate the private organization, the SMEs, and also the larger enterprises about this concept of interoperability and the ownership of data models, and they have to also to modify their mindset. And it's really the case that we experience with the local SME host to be, that we have the testimonial video, I think, that will follow. So I think it's the time to see this video. Fons?
Yeah, thank you, Vincent and Alexander, for your input, and thank you also answering on the procurement, because that was one of the questions I saw. I saw also another question about the future of the minimum interoperability mechanisms. Maybe that's something, Vincent, you might also contact or answer in the chat. One thing I wanted to remark here is that if you see our program of this afternoon, you see that we're not talking a lot about technology. And some of you who might be flying over to the Smart City Expo in Barcelona will see a lot of technology. And for us, the reality is that technology is an enabler. It's very important, and interoperability is a key to make things work. But there is so much more when talking about technology, talking about process and culture to make smart cities work. So I hope also by this session today that we can show the difference between just buying a piece of technology. It's really makes a difference what you do with it. And I think what Vincent presented here regarding interoperability is key. And I think if you ever meet, if you even go to Barcelona and you meet the technology provider who has the most fanciest sensors, just ask him the question about interoperability and ask them whether they know the minimum interoperability mechanisms, the MIMs, as Vincent just, and if they don't know what it is, then just walk to the next stand. That's my advice. All right, well, then let's move, because what they just talked about is actually also a nice video, the second video we have now. And it's a video on the watering system created by Hostaby. And I think it's, I don't know whether he's in the video, but it's Maxime Mulars. He's the founder and CEO of Hostaby, who tells us about their solution for Saint-Quentin. Go ahead.
Le challenge relevé par Hostaby était d'optimiser l'arrosage des terrains de sport. L'optimisation, c'est la bonne quantité d'eau au bon endroit, au bon moment. Pour relever ce défi, la première étape était l'intégration de notre application avec le programmateur d'arrosage. Ce qui nous a amené par la suite à travailler avec le numéro 1 mondial de l'arrosage, qui est Renber. La deuxième étape était d'évaluer les besoins en eau de chaque terrain, et pour cela, nous avons déployé des sondes d'humidité de sol. Troisième étape était de récupérer les périodes d'occupation de chaque terrain à partir de la plateforme de réservation de la ville de Saint-Quentin. Grâce à notre application, les agents des espaces verts peuvent suivre et piloter à distance le système d'arrosage. Grâce à Sci-Fi, nous avons collaboré avec la ville de Saint-Quentin et le faubourg numérique sur l'utilisation de la plateforme interopérable. Fort de ce succès, l'objectif de Hostaby est de trouver de nouveaux clients sur d'autres territoires.
All right, thank you very much for this video, which also showed Maxime Mulars from Hostaby, part of the ecosystem of Saint-Quentin. 1 second. That's the problem when you get a cold in the wrong moment. We'll move in the next presentation.
Yes, thank you, Frans, and hello to everyone. First of all, I would like to take a few minutes to draw your attention to some of the legal aspects of innovation procurement. You can go to the next slide. Actually, when we compare innovation procurement with the purchasing of, for example, off-the-shelf products, we'll notice that in the second case, the buyer will actually start with the drafting of the tender documents, publishing of the tender documents, and also the choice of the adequate tender procedure. When we look at the slide in front of us, we can see that actually in innovation procurement, the choice of the adequate tender procedure and thus the drafting of the tender documents does not come in the beginning of the procedure. Why is that? Because in innovation procurement, it is crucial to first execute a thorough needs assessment before actually launching the procedure itself. And that's actually the second phase here on the slide, the preliminary market consultations. Just for your information, within the choice of the adequate tender procedure, there are, of course, some tender procedures that facilitate the buy off-the-shelf products and other procedures that facilitate innovative aspects within the buying process itself. There's even one procedure, the PCP or the pre-commercial procurement, that is specifically designed to buy R&D. I suppose that everyone present here knows that it is, of course, the public buyer that has the responsibility to choose the right tender procedure and to draft and publish the tender documents. But that does not mean that the market players, so the innovators, do not have a role to play. It's actually the opposite. They have an extremely important role to play because they are the experts on their domain. they are the ones who possess the market knowledge about the innovation that the public buyer would actually like to purchase. So the preliminary market consultations are actually the perfect way to for both sides, so the seller and the buyer, to discuss the needs of the market, and so to execute this needs assessment. This is actually quite in line with what Jan said in the beginning of the presentation, that we need to focus on the needs and not specifically on the solution. Because if we get these needs right, then the solution will come afterwards. By telling this, I actually hope to transfer the message that the role of each party in this process is equally important, and that a good communication is key. And for your information, this is also the feedback that was given by the tech vendors in Stefan Korvert's guide on public procurement, meaningly that a regular interaction between the municipalities and the tech vendors was really perceived as positive, because that could make sure that the project is implemented to the satisfaction of all parties concerned. Another aspect that I would like to discuss is the fact that even if innovative or innovation procurement is a hot topic on the radar of public and private market players, I observe a certain hesitation from market players to participate in such tenders. You can go to the next slide. The first question that I ask myself is, why this hesitation? Actually, where does it come from? And I identified 3 types of hesitations. I'm sure that there are more, or that you can identify some other hesitations, but I'm going to focus on these 3 here. First of all, tech vendors indicated that the administrative tasks were quite burdensome. And secondly, they experienced difficulties in identifying their return on investment from the beginning of the procedure. I think we can all understand, or at least imagine, why some market players could actually need some more incentive to participate in such a tender procedure when we take these 2 hesitations or aspects together. Lastly, what I also observed is that tender documents or the public procurement procedure does not always include adequate clauses about intellectual property. And actually, this uncertainty for an innovator, whether he will be able to keep his own invention at the end of the road, can be, for an innovator, a reason to pull out of the project right from the start. So this is actually a recommendation from my part to potential public buyers to, really go into discussion with their potential sellers to find really an adequate clause about IP rights. Will it be in hands of the public buyer? Will the private party get to keep his IP rights at the end of the road? I think it's important that that is really clear from the beginning of the procedure. And I'll end this presentation by stressing out that even though I talked in this last part about the hesitations of the market players, that this should not be a reason to not participate, of course, because there are a lot of positive aspects also. And in that regard, I would like to give the floor to Evelien Buik, who will illustrate the lessons learned from an innovative buying process led by the city of Bruges.
Thank you, Joke. The city of Bruges was indeed one of the cities who tested the innovation procurement method developed in the Sci-Fi project. I will tell the procurement story from a very practical perspective. And we actually, if you can go to the next slide, thank you. We started by putting a specific challenge in the market for which we defined the need, and we did not start from a specific solution already available on the market. We worked together with companies who received 10,000 euros only for their work, and we had a limited working period of 6 months. During that period, they also, so the startups also received guidance and support from the other partners in the Sci-Fi project. So we had a lot more to offer than only our local working conditions. In the next slide, you will see how we have spread our cooperation over those 6 months. Jan already mentioned the Sci-Fi method in the beginning and the whole process behind it. So the cities and Bruges, of course, as well. We needed to define our local challenge through a specific format, and that challenge was published very broadly, after which we opened an application period, and we had a first selection of startups that presented their concept, and we went in direct interaction with them. We asked them specific questions as well before we really gave them the assignment for developing the pilot project, the proof of concept. And once we made the selection and we knew the startups we were going to work with, we had a launching event, and we set up a cooperation agreement in which we stipulated the payment terms. Also, we defined milestones, we agreed on IP rights, etc. And they received 50% of their budget to get started with the pilot project. They also got access to specific workshops offered by the partnership. There were events, and they could ask specific coaching as well to our partners, thanks to the Sci-Fi funding. Next slide. The pilot project ended with a specific proof of concept, so not a finalized product. I think that's very important to mention here. You see the specific solution from one of our pilots on cycling. It was a cycling challenge that we had defined, and the result of the cooperation was a digital tool collecting data from smart cycling lights used by children cycling to school. The data was used to advise us on safer cycling routes and allowed us to gather information of the cycling routes that the kids used, because they could really send in as well information on obstacles they saw, where they felt unsafe, roads that were damaged, etc. And we had a gamification aspect added as well, so classes and kids could compete amongst each other to collect most kilometers cycled and or send in most information, etc. So they received awards as well for using the tool. In return, we received a lot of data on the cycling conditions in our city, and we were able to steer the kids as well in using safer cycling routes as well. Next slide. The positive side of using this innovative procurement methodology was that there was an added value for the startup as well. They had immediate interaction with their client or their target group. In this specific cycling case, for example, they had immediate access to the schools, to the kids cycling, to their stakeholders from who they needed the information to develop their tool. In another classical procurement procedure, they would never have been able to reach directly their target group. They really went into the schools, they talked directly to the kids, to their parents, they organized workshops there, and we as a city facilitated that process. A learning for the city as well was also that this way of working was a very good opportunity to receive feedback from the company, to keep our local ideas sharp. And we also learned how to clearly focus and formulate local challenges. The EU projects as well, thanks to the funding, it gave us room for experiment from a local perspective and the city perspective. There's not often a lot of room for experiment. It needs to be always very successful from the top. And also here during those 6 months for us, it was ideal because we were not sure where we were going to land, what the results would be. Not every pilot was as successful. And thanks to Sci-Fi, we received practical tools and guidance to do this and to dare to do this. And we also worked with cities, with other cities together who also had some troubles or had more experience or had other knowledge. So it was very useful in this case to be able to exchange and to hear how other colleagues from other cities have handled specific issues. We learned a lot of lessons as well. Also, this is well, it's a bit profiled as a smart city project. You cannot do this with a smart city manager alone, as Dimitri already mentioned. Your internal ecosystem is of huge importance. You need the support from within your organization. If, for example, you work, like in this case, on a mobility challenge, they need to be involved. And at a certain point, you will need your procurement officer, your communications department, your financial department. So it's very important if you want to do a solution through an innovative procurement way. They need to be involved from the beginning, and they need to be allowed to have time as well to get involved because they have a lot of work with their business as usual. So it's very important to take that in mind. And also keep the procurement procedure separate. I mean, the pilot and implementation phase is something different. It might very well be that the proof of concept is not going to be implemented after all. It might be that the business model is not clear enough after 6 months, or that it's simply too expensive to implement. So you don't know what you engage in the long run. And if you keep it separate, it's easier to stop it as well if you don't have a successful pilot. Also, it needs to be very clear between the company and the city who takes on which tasks. You have your own responsibility, and you need to be clear from the beginning what is included in the tasks that the company takes up, that the startup takes up. Who will deploy the sensors, for example? Who will take on communication activities? So that's a lot of things that can be stipulated in a cooperation agreement as well. And then one of the most important things, I think, is that you need to document every step of the process. What worked well, what did not, what was the result, what was good or not. Because if in the end you decide to finally procure this solution, it needs to be open for everybody. You start an open procurement procedure maybe after the pilot phase. So everybody applying needs to get the same information. And the more you document, the more you can share and you can put open as well. One last thing maybe is that the startups mentioned that the application process was quite intense. I think Dimitri or Jan also mentioned that they needed to submit quite an elaborate application form, and that's not always easy for startups. Bigger companies have a whole team of experts ready on financial issues or IP issues. Startups don't always have that, and it's a lot of effort sometimes for, in this specific case, only 10,000 euros. In the end, for Bruges, it was a big challenge to do this. It was a comfort to have a team of partners available that we can count on. It was really nice to have their expertise and the space for exchange as well. But we have documented very well in the Cookbook. So I think it's really a good instrument for other cities who would like to start working this way. That's my story.
Thank you, Evelien, for your contribution, and thank you, Joke, for saving me just a minute ago. So thank you, Joke, expert on public procurement from Agoria, for your two presentations. I also saw in the chat that Camilla from our partner Cambridge Cleantech has added some links to the what we call the procurement guide with all the information which Joke already touched upon, where you can just download all that information for free. Because that's the whole idea, that you have this information for free. I saw also a comment by Gerard Blom regarding the usage of pre-commercial procurement. There are about 9 ways of innovative procurement. Innovative partnership is one, and the other one is PCP. I think it's really interesting that we share this kind of knowledge because that helps the procurement departments in cities really to move faster when not reinventing the wheel again and again. So thank you for sharing that with us. Let's see, are there any other questions? I see, well, this seems to be a bit, well, we'll do the video first, and then I have time to read the chat. Well, the next is a video, which is actually by a partner of the city of Bruges. And it's a video pitch from Gamification Nation, done by Anne Koppens, who is the founder of this organization, Gamification, and it says itself, Gamification Nation. Go ahead.
I would like to tell you the story of Carbon Zero Commute. The challenge we had was to develop ways of creating sustainable multimodal transport and great choices through the help of gamification. So there comes Carbon Zero Commute. The pilot, well, we were planning great fun live workshops and surveys, but then lockdowns happened. In collaboration with Stadtbrugge, we decided to flip the work schedule and start with building the clickable prototype rather than the user research. With lockdowns persisting, promoting commuting was really not the best suggestion. So we took our clickable prototype to UX and UI students from Middlesex University in London. And shock horror, they told us that they didn't understand what carbon emissions were, and we needed to put some education in our application. But 90% of them said they would use the app, and especially for the rewards and to have fun with friends. So the gamification elements worked. We did also iterate the UI several times as a result of their feedback, and we added an onboarding module to explain how everybody doing a little can actually make an impact on their carbon footprint. The app is now ready. We actually went ahead and developed it further. And our ask, well, first of all, we'd love to see your city logo on our app, where you see that part, your city here. We want cities to become early adopters and make Carbon Zero Commute work for your city. We are also looking for €50,000 investment to develop the admin portal so that it's easy for cities to get reporting and also to tailor the design. So if you don't like our standard look and feel, you can have your own. And the 50,000 investment will also give us a marketing budget to give and bring the project to market. So come check us out on www.carbonzerocommute.com.
Thank you for this video. Anne Koppens, and Anne is also in this video conference. So via a direct message chat, you can actually also get in touch with her, especially when you have €50,000 to give away, which I read there. So thank you very much. I saw a question, maybe Joke, that's one for you. Is the question was, you know, is there a possibility to choose for the city or the municipality to keep the intellectual property of the solution, or does the IP always stay with the creation of the innovation?
Yes. Well, actually, to draw before a city or a municipality drafts its IP clause, it's important to look at the destination of the innovation that he wants to buy. What do I mean by that? Well, actually, if the innovation can be further commercialized, so for example, if there are other potential interested buyers, then I would suggest that the IP stays with the innovator of the product to give him the chance to further commercialize it. Keep in mind also that actually an IP clause in favor of the market players, of potential innovators, will also be an incentive for them to participate in the project, because they know, okay, I can keep my IP rights at the end of the day. Are there other hypotheses? Of course, maybe it is possible that, for example, a public buyer wants to procure really a unique product for which there are no potential other buyers. Well, then I think it might be easier that actually the IP rights are in hands of the public buyer himself, because further commercialization is not really possible. So I think that the balance field is between would you like to offer the innovator to further commercialize his product, yes or no, knowing that that might be an incentive to get for yourself also a better product.
Okay, thank you very much, Joke, for that addition to the question about IP. Now, I think it's about time. I don't see any other questions at the moment. So it's about time to break up in the sense of that we actually will have 2 breakout rooms where you, as attendees of this video conference, or webinar, whatever you want to call it, can actually join us, and it's a bit of an experiment how we can actually exchange and have a very interactive session together on the solutions which have been created in the different cities. So Evelien and I, Bruges and Delft, we will move to room 1, and Jan and Alexandre from Mechelen and Saint-Quentin, they will actually go for breakout room 2. Of course, this is an interesting challenge to see who gets most attendees, Jan. But so it's up to you to make your choice. Then the next 25 minutes or 20 minutes, we'll actually go into the breakout rooms, and then we get back together for the closure of this session. So please make your choice. Somewhere it shows on your screen, join a breakout room, and you choose the one you would like to join. See you back in breakout. I might see you in breakout room 1, or I'll see you back later on when we get together.